Well, hello there, my good friend. It's great to see you again. Come on in. Welcome back to the GameDev Tavern. Just make yourself at home, kick off your feet, and just relax as we create fun little games together. My name is Nicholas, and this is episode 21 in the tutorial series where we create a 2D arcade soccer game from scratch in Godot. And welcome back. So today we are going to completely shift gears and build out our in-game UI. And this is going to be a pretty minimalist UI, which will only be showing the score, the clock time, and then whoever currently has the ball. We'll also create some nice animations whenever someone scores a goal and when the game is over. Now, to be honest, we could actually have an entire 10-hour course just on building UIs in Godot. It's just such a vast and fascinating topic, and Godot just has so much to explore. I actually might do that at some point, but in the meantime, just for the sake of time for this series, which is already getting to be pretty long, I'm actually not going to spend too much time drilling into details, showing you multiple alternatives and so forth. I'm just going to mostly work my way through the implementation of a simple UI with you, and hopefully you can follow along and everything will make sense. So to start with, all of our text labels are going to have very similar styling in terms of color and font size and fonts. So rather than setting our style every single time, we're just going to go ahead and create a theme, which will just help things speed things up just a bit. So into your resource folder, right click and create new resource. And let's go ahead and find a theme. Okay, and I'm going to save this at the root folder here. And I'm going to call this game_theme. All right, and if you double click it, it should open up here in this theme explorer. I'm going to drag this up a little bit so we can see better. And then here I'm going to click on manage items. I'm going to bring this here and import items. I'm going to go and find the label. And here I'm going to import, let's see, the font color. I'm going to import the font size and the font. So just those three items here. Okay, you can click on import selected and then click on close, click OK. We now have those three things selected. So for font color, let's go ahead and pick FFFF00, which is this bright yellow. And then in terms of our font, here I'm going to drag, if you find in your folder, there's a font called pixel.ttf. Just drag that true type font over to the font folder. And then in terms of font size, which is this fourth tab here, just set that to 5 pixels. So it's going to look really small for now, and it's not going to reflect here. In order to do that, you need to hop over into project settings, and then if you scroll down to, where is it, theme somewhere, GUI theme, here, pick on custom, go ahead and find the theme that we just created. And then in custom font, go ahead and locate the font, which is currently in assets, fonts, and you just want to pick pixeled. Actually, I think we're not going to use this. I might remove it. Okay, and then click on save and restart. All right, so if you now double click on your theme, you can now see that it has reflected with the correct theme with the proper sets. All right, so let's go ahead and close this for now, and let's start working and making our way through our UI. So let's create a new scene here and click on other node, and we're going to create a canvas layer. We want the UI to be drawn on a different layer than the game. And I guess we can rename this to UI in all capital. Let's go ahead and save it. And I'm going to save this into my scenes folder, create a new folder, and I'm going to call that folder UI, and just save it inside the scene/UI folder. All right, so here we're going to start composing our UI with various nodes. So Control A, Control for this, and let's call it UI container. And then inside your layout, set the anchor to full rect. And then the first child, we are going to make our scoreboard here at the bottom. So Control A, let's start having a color rect. We're just going to use that for our background. And let's make the color, I think if you only use 222s, it's going to create this dark gray here. Then let's anchor it to the bottom. So layout mode anchor and bring it all the way to the bottom center. Okay, and then let's set the size. So in the transform here, let's set the size to 200 times 14. Actually, let me reset the anchor after I've set the size here. This is good. So then let's go ahead and create an HBox container. HBox container here. And once again, we're going to make it take the full width and height. So let's go ahead and use a full rect so it takes the entire space possible. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. Let's set the alignment to center, so everything's centered in the middle of this container. And then let's hop over into the theme override and set the separation to 0. We don't want anything to separate the various elements in there. And then in terms of transform, I'm going to have you set the size to 200 times 15 pixels, and then the position to 0 minus 1. All right, so next let's start filling up this container. We'll start by adding a first label. So pick the container, Control A, pick the first label, and here let's call this player label. And let's just type some text just so you can see what it looks like. And you can see the styling is already preset with the theme, which is perfect. It just saves us some time. I guess we can remove this for now. We'll just fill that in inside the code directly. The only thing we want to do inside the layout here is set the minimum size, and we'll want to make sure that this takes at least, I think it's 60 pixels here. Okay, and we'll also want to override the color. So in colors, font color, just pick, I think we want to have some form of gray here. All right, so that's it for the first label. Let's go ahead and hop back over to the container, Control A. We're going to create a texture rect, and this is going to be used for our flag, the home flag texture. So for this, I'm going to pick a texture called flag placeholder. I'm going to drag this into my texture property, and I'm going to set the stretch mode to keep. Then in terms of custom size, I'm not sure if I need to do anything here. I think it already takes, yeah, it looks okay. I guess just to be sure, I'm going to set the custom height to 14 pixels. But yeah, I don't think it actually makes a difference. All right, okay, that's great. Next, let's create another label. Pick the HBox container, Control A, label. Let's call this one score label. This is going to look like this, 2, 3, for example. That's going to be the score. Let's align it to the center. And let's make that size. We want to provide some room in case there's a high score. Let's set this to 28 pixels here in terms of custom minimum size. Okay, let's duplicate the home texture. So I'm going to click it, Control D, and I'm going to drag it down below the score label. I'm going to rename this away flag texture. And that's pretty much it. We'll be setting the texture in the code down the line. And finally, let's take the player label and duplicate it, bring it all the way down. And here we're going to rename this time label. It already has all of the right colors and everything. And this is going to look something like this, 0134. We should probably align it to the right. There we go. And in terms of minimum size, I don't think we need to do anything, but just in case, I'm going to set this to, yeah, I think we're okay here. Okay, and then the player label, let me just have some random text here. All right, so let's go ahead and add this UI to our world scene. So hop over into the world, and let me close this theme editor here, and then let's Control-Shift-A on the world, and then let's pick our UI, and it should now be put inside our game. So if you start the game with F5, we should now see the UI at the bottom. All right, perfect. Okay, it looks great, although now it's completely static. So we are going to write our code to modify these values. So first, back into the scene, we are going to need to access all of these 5 elements inside our code. So go ahead and select all of them, right-click, access as unique name, then pick the UI node, and let's create a script for this. I think this name will do fine. Let's go here, let's give this a class name. And I'm going to bring this down so we can actually have some room to write our code. All right, so first, let's go ahead and start by having our onReady variables. So we'll have our flag texture. I'm going to just have one single variable for this, and I will define it as an array. So here we'll have the home flag texture, and then we have the away flag texture. The next one is going to be our score label, which is going to be of type label. Third one is going to be our player label. And finally, we'll have our time label. Let me just bring this player label here so it's ordered properly. Okay, so what do we want to do? Well, first, let's start by updating the score. We'll create a method called update score. And inside our update score method, so rather than do all of this logic here, I'm actually going to be using a bunch of static functions as part of helper classes that we're going to create. So for now, let me just go ahead and pass, and let's start by creating this helper. So file, new script, and this is something that I usually like to do whenever I have methods that I want to be able to reuse left and right, and that shouldn't depend on anything from the game. So let's go into our utils folder, and here I'm going to create a method called score_helper. All right, this does not need to extend anything. We don't want that to have any sort of processing. We'll just give this a class name. And then we can actually create some static functions here that we can then call from anywhere in the code. So here the objective is to provide the score array from the game manager, and then we'll return a string. All right, and so here we just want to provide the score. So for this, we can pass in, so it'll be an integer, and an integer, we format this inside the string, and then whenever you have multiple arguments, you can use this % here, and then pass the arguments in an array here. So here, we'll have our score 0 and our score 1. All right, that actually makes me think, I think our key utils right now is a node when it shouldn't be. Yeah. So this is wrong. We shouldn't have this as a node. Like, this doesn't need any sort of processing or anything. So actually, let me just fix this right away. So let me call this class name keyUtils, and then let's make all of those functions static, so we have access from them all over the code base as well. Okay, and keyUtils hides. Okay, so we need to remove it. So project settings, go into your globals folder, and you can remove this from the auto-loaded variables. All right, if it complains, I'm going to try to run the game and see. Okay, and it should be okay. All right. Okay, so back into our UI. So here we can now use the new function that we just created. So our score label.text, score helper.get score text, and here we'll pass in our game managers.score. All right, let's try this out. Just start and update this for 0, 0 at the bottom. Score text, is that not the name? Get score text of array. Doesn't have the same. Okay, let me see. What do we have in game manager? Game manager. Oh, I guess we need to specify that this is an array of integers. Yeah, somehow GDScript always struggles with typing overall, and it's a little bit of a pain sometimes, but okay, this should work. So I've updated the type of score, and now inside my UI, it should recognize. Okay, so it properly updates the score at the very bottom, 0, 0. All right, great. So that's the first thing that we needed to do. The second thing, let's go ahead and update the flags. So again, we'll just have another method to update this. And what do we want to do? Well, let's loop over the various flags that we have. So let's look at the various nodes. And then let's set the proper texture. So here, once again, I'm going to create, let me create another helper method here. So let me create a new script, and then let's locate this as part of our utils folder. I'm going to call this texture helper, maybe, or flag helper, maybe better. All right, give this a class name. We don't need to extend node. Okay, so here, let me keep a reference to the various textures so we don't have to load them multiple times. And I'll make this a dictionary. The key is going to be the string, and the value is going to be the textures. All right, so now let's go ahead and create a function getTexture, and we'll pass in the country, and we'll return our texture 2D. So here, let's check if we have that in our dictionary, and if not, we'll go ahead and add it. So how do we add it? Well, we want to load it from our resource file. So here, if you look at your folders, you actually have a UI/flags/ and then you have a bunch of flags here. The thing you'll see is that the names of the flags are actually always the same. It's flag dash and then the name of the country. And these names of countries, we shouldn't mess those up, I guess. That's the one thing. But in case we do mess up, it'll just throw an error. But otherwise, this is kind of a standard way to describe the flags. So earlier in that series, we created we had the ability to play with Canada. Whenever we add the flag of Canada, we'll need to have flag-canada.png. So here we can just go ahead and load whatever flag, let's say this one here, and then we'll just replace this name. So %s, and let's replace this with the country.toLower. All right, so now that we have set the value in our dictionary, we can return it. Okay, and we'll only load this once, right? Like every time we ask that texture, if it's already been loaded, it'll be part of our dictionary and we'll be good to go. So back into our UI code here, let's go ahead and use this method. So flag helper.getTexture, and here we'll want to ask the texture for the ETH country. Countries, flag texture. Textures. There we go. Okay, I think we can try this out. So F5, we should have both flags set properly. Perfect. Okay, so we have France on the left-hand side and the USA on the right-hand side. All right, next, let's go ahead and update our clock. So update clock, and let's also make sure we reset the player's label because we're not going to keep Mbappe there. All right, update clock. Let's go ahead and work through this. All right, so this is pretty straightforward. Basically, we have our time, which is currently being provided by Game Manager. So first, let's check if we have any time left. If we don't, I just want to color this in the time in yellow. Right now, it's colored in some form of gray. We'll just use the modulate function for this, and I'll just use a basic yellow color. And then in terms of label, let me create once again a helper class. Let's call this time helper. So file, new script, and let's bring this over into our utils folder, time_helper. Same thing here. I'm going to just define a class name and create a static function, get time text. And so here, this is just going to ask some form of time left. So this is the number of seconds that are left. So we start off with 2 minutes, which is 120 seconds. So, okay, we want to get the text for this. So first, let's check if we have any time left. Otherwise, we'll just return overtime. And otherwise, the number of minutes is going to be time left divided by 60. And the number of seconds is going to be time left minus minutes times 60. All right, so now we can return our string, which is going to be properly formatted. So %02d means that this integer needs to take two values. So it will start with a 0 in case there's a single value. And here, let's have another one. And in terms of value, we'll pass that as an array with minutes and seconds. All right, so we now have this getTimeText method. Let's hop back into our UI and use this. TimeHelper.getTimeLeft, GameManager.TimeLeft. Okay, we actually want to do this during our process method as well. So we keep changing it over time. We're not going to use delta. And let's just update the clock. All right, so let's go ahead and try this out. And we should now have the clock. So it starts off at 2 minutes, and right now it doesn't run down because the game manager is not in its play state. But as soon as I pass the ball, there we go. We can see now the timer is going down. And I don't know if we want to keep this space between the 0, 1 and 53, but anyways, one thing I do want to try out is making sure that we go into overtime. So let me go into the game manager. And one thing I'm going to start doing moving forward, because there is just a ton of files here on the left-hand side, and you might actually have the same problem on your end, to navigate files easily rather than look for the file. One thing I like to do, by the way, this button here is absolutely horrible. It just never works for me. But I use Control P. Control P just allows you to select any sort of resource, including your scripts. So here I know that I want to go into my game manager. I can just type game manager and go there directly. And that's usually how I navigate between files whenever I start having more than 20, 30 files here. Okay, I just want to check that whenever we have, let's say we only have 2 seconds left, I want to make sure that we go into overtime here. So I'm going to pass the ball. And after 0 seconds, overtime. Perfect. And then you can see it goes in yellow. And now if I score, by the way, I should not go back into the reset state, which is perfect, right? We're not supposed to do this because the game has actually ended here. All right, great. So this works. Let me just reset the time to 2 minutes and go back into my UI code. And we want to now change the name of the player. So right now, if you look at your UI view here, I want this to be the name of the player who currently has the ball. And as soon as the ball gets released, either it gets shots or pass or whatever, just want that to be cleared altogether. Now, this is actually something that's pretty easy to do. Basically, we have in our scripts, we have a state called ball state carried, where we know whenever someone starts to carry the ball. And actually, when we exit this state is when the ball stops being carried. So we can just have that class emit 2 global signals and listen to them. So we can just update the name of the carrier of the ball. So let's start by defining our global events. So I'm going to go into game events. And here I'm going to define 2 new events, signal ball, let me bring them at the top here, ball possessed and ball released. Okay, and let me have the ball emit those. So once again, I'm going to go into the ball state carried, and here I'm going to emit the signal here. I'm thinking it might be important to send the name here. So let me send carrier.fullname. And let me go back into my game events and define it on the process. We want to have the carrier name or player name. All right, so back again into my ball state carried. I want to emit the second signal whenever we exit the tree. So I'll just put this at the bottom. Game events dot ball released dot emit. And here I don't think we need to pass the name. All right, so back into our UI script, we're going to listen to both of those events. We can do this inside our ready function. And let's connect to the second one. We'll just add our methods right after. All right, start with the first one, on ball possessed. I'm going to bring this at the very bottom here. So here this uses one argument, which is the name of the player. And we'll just update our player's label to that player's name. Okay, and then whenever we release the ball, we'll just set this value to an empty string. All right, we can try this out. So F5, and then once I pass the ball, and I have my name at the bottom left, which is properly updated. If I pass again, all right, now it's Luna, Kylian Mbappe, and Olivier Giroud. Okay, perfect. All right, so now we are going to start working through our animations, and we're going to be building two animations, one for whenever a team scores the goal, and then another when the game is finished. So we're going to have some form of mask that starts to gray out the screen a little bit, just to give some form of just a little bit of style whenever the animation is happening. So click on the UI container and then Control A. Let's go ahead and create a color rect. And I'm going to call this mask. I'm going to bring this up actually above everything here. And let me set the color to, I think I want to set the color to black, and then we'll change the modulate. So into our layout, set this to anchor and full rect. And then in terms of visibility, set the modulates alpha down to 0. Okay, and basically when the animation starts, we'll have this start to gray out a little bit, and it'll create some nice little mask effect. For now, we can just keep that transparent. All right, so we are going to need to add a couple of things. We're going to have the texture that shows that there's a goal, and then we'll have some information to tell us who scored and then the current score after that has happened. So let's start by creating our goal texture. So back on the UI container, Control A, I'm going to pick our texture rect. I'm going to rename this goal texture. And inside your folder, find a file called goal.png. Just drag that image over to the texture property. And as you can see here, this is kind of this pixel art style goal, which will be showing up inside the game. So let's set the anchor to center right here. And then hop over into the transform. I think size is okay. Position, I guess I'm not a big fan of having half of pixels here, so I'm going to set that to 74. And then scale is going to be this, but actually we're going to change this. The animation is actually going to be, we're going to start at 0 and we're going to bring it to 1. So for this, we're going to need to change the pivot offset. We're going to set this to 6621. And this centers the offset, which means that now whenever you bring the scale down, it actually centers it in the middle. So our animation is going to start at 0, 0, and then we're going to bring it up and then back down. So for now, we can just leave that to 1 just to see what it will look like. Let's go ahead and add another label back on the UI container, Control A, pick a label. Let's call this label goal scorer label. And this will indicate something like Mbappé just scored or something like that. Or Mbappé scored or something like that. So for now, let's hop over into the layout. Let's set the size to 100 times 14. I think that should be fine. Let's anchor it to the center. Layout mode, anchor center. So it's right there. And then let's bring the position down. Let's set that to 120 pixels. So that way it shows in the middle here. And then also let's center the text. So horizontal alignment, let's put that in the center. And then in terms of font color, theme override color, let's pick EECE00. It's a slightly less yellow than the bright yellow which we have. All right, next up, let's go ahead and create another label. So UI container, Control A, label, and similarly here, we're going to have something along the lines of France leads 1-0. It'll just give some information. We'll just place that right below. So for that, that label might be a little bit bigger. So let's go ahead and set the size first. So in layout, transform, let's set the X size to 120, so the width. Let's set the anchor to be centered. And let's set the position to 80, and let's set this maybe down to 135. 135 might be better. Okay, let's make sure that this is centered. So horizontal alignment, center. And in terms of color, so theme override color, here let's pick EE9500, which is this darker orange, I guess. All right, so whenever we have the animation, all of those three things will pop up. We'll need access to, let me rename this to score info label. We'll need access to both this and this inside our code. So right click and access as unique name. And then we'll actually need to create our animation player. So right click on UI, add child node. Let's go ahead and pick our animation player. And I guess we can keep the name here, but we are going to need to access it in the code. So access that as unique name as well. All right, so let's go ahead and start creating our animation. Animation new, I'm gonna call this animation goal appear. And so for that, I'm actually going to start by setting the default values for these three objects. So for the goal texture, I'm actually going to set the scale to 0. And for the score label and for the score info label, I'm going to set the, let's set the modulate, visibility modulate. I'm going to bring the alpha channel all the way to 0. All right, so inside our animation, we're going to have, so let's set this animation to 0.4. Let's set the snap to 0.1. Make sure we snap to the timeline, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. And then at the very beginning of our timeline, at 0 second, let's go ahead and have a keyframe for our texture scale. Let's go ahead and have a keyframe for the modulate as well. So in visibility, modulate, I'm going to keep that keyframe as well. And then inside my goal scorer label, I'm going to have a keyframe for my modulate as well. And let's have one for the score info label as well. So in visibility, modulate, there we go. And in our mask, let's also set that keyframe as well. So we should have four different nodes and 5 different properties at time 0. This is kind of the very beginning of the animation. We're going to hop over into at 0.2 seconds. And here I'm just going to take the goals texture and I'm going to set the scale to 1.1. And I'm going to create a keyframe here. And I'm also going to set the value of the transformation to cubic. So it has a little bit more juice into it. And then at 0.4, we're going to set the final values of the animation. So first we are going to set the scale to 1.1, 1.0, create a keyframe here. And then inside our modulate, goal score is going to be at 100%. Score info label is going to be at 100%. And then our mask, let's set the color to maybe 40 something. Let's try 43. Yeah, that should be fine. And set a keyframe here. All right, so if we start the animation, let's go ahead and play it. We should now see that the everything appears properly. Okay, we are going to need to create another animation to hide the content. So let's go ahead and create animation, new. Let's call this one goal underscore hide. And let's make this 0.4 as well. And then here at the very beginning, we're going to take our 4 properties. So the mask, let's go to goal appear. I'm going to go at the very bottom, and then let's go into goal hide. And here I'm going to create a keyframe at frame 0, so it's at the same value for modulate. And then inside my goal texture, I'm also going to create a keyframe for modulate. Score label, I'm going to create a keyframe for modulate. And then score info label, I'm going to create a keyframe for modulate as well. And I'm just going to go to the end 0.4 of the timeline, and I'm going to bring all of these back down to 0 alpha transparency. So goal score label, modulate, bring this to 0. Okay, let's do the same for the texture. I'm just going to fade this, not change the scale. So bring it all the way here, create a keyframe. And finally, our mask, same thing. I'm just going to bring the masks modulate to all the way to 0. All right, so we start here, and this is our fade animation. All right, perfect. Okay, so we have our 2 animations. We have access to the various values that we need. So let's go ahead and implement this in the code. So let's go into the UI folder and we'll start by adding references to our new values here. Our animation player, then G, goal score label, and finally we'll need our score info label. All right, so we want to connect to the events where a team has scored and when the team is resetting, and use those to play the proper animations. So let's go ahead and connect to those. The first one is going to be team scored. Second one is when the team's resets. All right, let's go ahead and create those two callbacks. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. Here we are passing, I think the argument is the country that was scored on, which I don't think we're going to need here, so I'm just going to use an underscore. It doesn't return anything. And here I'm going to pass for now. I'm going to implement the second one, on team reset. And here we're going to play goal hide. All right, so here we want to play player.play goal, what's the name? Goal appear. Okay, so we want to play this animation, but first of all, we want to set the proper text for the score and for the information here. Now, we need to know who scored the goal. And currently, we only have the information about the country that scored the goal. We actually completely lose track of who was the last person who carried the ball. But we actually have that information here. We're actually displaying it in the UI. So a quick and dirty way, I don't know if it's really the best way, but we can just keep track of this. We can have a variable inside as part of the UI and just keep track of this. Whenever the goal gets scored, we can reuse that. So at the top here, I'm going to create a variable called lost ball carrier. By default, it'll be an empty string. And then inside my on ball possessed, I'm going to keep track of this. All right, so before I display the animation, I can now change the text of my goal score label. I'm just going to put something very simple, like the name of the person and then scored. All right, and we now want to showcase the score. So maybe we can use the score helper for this. So let's create another static function here. Get current score info. And what should we pass? Let's pass the countries, which is going to be an array of string. And let's pass our score, which is an array of integers. Okay, and here we just want to display something along the lines of the teams are tied, or France is leading 1-0, or USA is leading, and so forth. So if the score is equal, if the teams are tied, then we'll just return teams are tied. I guess we can display the score as well. Okay, if the home team is leading, let's indicate the name of the country, leads, and then here let's have the actual score. All right, so here we'll want to specify the name of the first country, the home team, then their score, and then the score of the other team. Otherwise, we can have pretty much the same code, except it'll be the away team leading, so we'll want to show their score first. All right, so we have access to this method here, which we can now use as part of our UI. So back in here, let's set our score info label, text, and let's use our score helper method. Okay, and so here we want to pass our game manager, the countries, game manager dot score. All right, let's go ahead and try this out. And actually, I think this is not going to work, but I'm curious to see if you're going to see why. All right, let me see if I can score with Mr. Giroux here. All right, okay, yeah, that's exactly what I was expecting. So first of all, the animation went well, except the only problem here is the text wasn't displayed properly. And even here, the score is not displayed properly. So why is that? Well, the reason is because we currently have multiple objects listening to the same game event. We have, whenever we're scoring a goal, we have the global game manager, which enters into the game state scored right here. And we have the UI that enters its, that has its own callback. But actually, it takes a little bit of time for the game state to the game manager to go into this state. And inside this state is where we actually make the changes. So here there's somewhat of a race condition between the UI and the game manager. So a simple solution to fix this would be to just have a separate event whenever the score changes. So let's hop over into our game event, and I'm going to create a new signal for changing the score. I'm going to call this score change, and I'm going to emit this from the game state scored right after I have updated the score. Okay, and now we can listen to this inside our UI script. And rather than listen to the team scored, I'm going to listen to the score changed. And might as well change the name of the signature here. On score changed. And I'm going to rename on team scored with score changed. This actually does not need any string here. All right, so let's try this again and see if we actually get the score to properly get fixed. Oh, and I think we may need to update the score at the bottom as well. Update score. There we go. All right, see if I can score once again. Oh, wrong key. Did not want to do a pass here. All right, let's go Griezmann. Oh, perfect. There we go. And now the score is properly updating. The time is stopped, and we are back. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to add an animation for whenever the game finishes. Let's just persist our changes first. And a goal scoring animation. All right, now I know that we're already way over time for this episode, but I hope you'll indulge me here as I'm really hoping we can complete those animations today. So let's go ahead and create the animation for whenever the game ends. I'm going to hop over into the 2D view, and I'm going to create a new texture rect. So as part of the UI container, Control A, texture rect, and I'm going to call this times up texture. Let me drag this right below the gold texture. And then inside your folder here, find an image called timesUp.png. Just drag that image over to the texture property. Oh, I think there we go. Okay, and then in the layout, set the layout mode to center, anchored to the center. And this is a little bit too far down, so we're going to bring it up a little bit, set the Y position to 22. And in terms of pivot offset, we want to set that to the middle of our size. So here this is going to be 155. This way, whenever we play with the scale, we can have something that gets centered on the screen. Perfect. Let me set that back to 1, and we can now create our animation. So let's create, go into animation player, animation, new. I'm going to call this game_over. This is going to be an animation that lasts 0.4 seconds. We're going to snap it every 0.1 seconds, snap it to the timeline, and I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so we can see things a little bit better. I'm going to start by taking this new texture that we added, and I'm going to, starting at timeline 0 second, set the scale all the way down to 0, create a keyframe, and then I'm going to go to 0.2, and I'm going to set the scale to 1.1 for both the X and Y, create a keyframe, then go all the way to 0.4 and set this back to 1. So it has kind of a growth and then shrink effect. I'm going to set the interpolation here to cubic, and you can see here the effect. All right, this is good. Let's go ahead and set the mask as well. We're going to create a keyframe at time 0 whenever it's completely transparent, and then go over to 0.4, and we'll set the color to something a little bit darker. I don't know, something like this. This is fine, 65. And set a keyframe at 0.4. And then lastly, set the score info label. This is going to display whichever team has won with the final score. So hop over into the modulate, start at frame, starting at time 0. Set a keyframe for modulate when it's completely transparent. And then go over to 0.4 seconds, and let's reset the modulate so it's purely white, and set another keyframe here. So if I play the animation now, it's going to look like this. So my mask and my score here pop up from transparent to full alpha, and then my time's up has this nice animation here. All right, great. So let's go ahead and hook up the logic for this animation. So we'll need to start by defining a global event to let everyone know that the game is over. So let's start by hopping over into our script and going into our game events. I'm going to create a new event called game over. And the argument here, I'm going to pass the country that has won the game. And this is going to be useful for players listening to this so they can properly celebrate if they have won the game. All right, so we'll be emitting this signal from the game over state, which is part of the game state. So if I hop over into the game state, game over, currently we don't have anything here. We just need to emit the signal, and we need to pass the country that has won. So for that, maybe let me just get that value from country winner from our game manager. I'm just going to create a method called get winner country, and then I'm going to pass that when I'm going to emit the game over signal. So let me create this method right here. I'm going to hop over into the game manager, and all the way at the bottom, I'm going to start creating this helper function. So this returns a string. Here, let's just make sure that we are not in a tie game. So maybe let's create another method here. Let's compare the two scores. And here, let's assert that we are not in tie game. Okay, we could also return an empty string, by the way. That could also work. All right, so here we just want to return the name of the proper country that has won by just comparing the scores. And this is pretty straightforward. All right, so we need to think about how do we transition into this new state that we created, right? Like the game over state. So there's basically two ways that we can get into this state. The first possibility is that we're currently playing and the clock runs out, but a team has scored more goals than the other team, in which case that team is declared the winner. The other case is when we're in overtime, because the teams were tied when the time ran out, and then a team scores, and that team is now declared the winner. So we should already have the logic for when the clock runs out with the winning team. This should be as part of our in play. So in game state in play, right here. So basically, if the time is up and we don't have a tie game, then we transition into this game over state. So this is good. By the way, I find this a little bit hard to read. Here, I think we have a new method for this. And then let me create another method to check if time is up. I think it will also be a little bit cleaner as well. I'm just going to check whether there's any time left. Okay, and back into our in play, I'm going to replace this call here. There we go. It's a little bit more readable, right? So if the time is up and the game is tied, we go into overtime. Otherwise, we go into the game over state. If we go into the overtime state, I think here we need to check whichever team scores first and declare them the winner. So I don't think we've implemented that state yet. So if I go into the game state overtime, here we need to write the logic for this. So for that, we need to listen to the team scored event. Game event.teamscored.connect. Okay, and let's create a callback for this. And this returns the country that was scored on. Okay, and here we want to not only transition into the game over state, but we also want to make sure that we properly register the new score, the change in score. So game manager.state.gameover. but we also want to change the score. So this is actually going to be the very same code that as we had for the game state scored. These 3 lines of code are actually going to be duplicated. So rather than to duplicate them, let me cut them and manager.increase score. Okay, and I'm going to hop over into my manager and create that increase score method. So this is going to take the country scored on, and I'm going to paste the 3 lines that I had earlier, and I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now we have this method as part of the game manager that we are calling from the scored state. This is exactly the same thing. I'm going to copy this line, and I'm going to hop over into the overtime state, and whenever we are before going into the game over, we actually want to also increase the score as well. Okay, so we are now properly going into this game over state from both the overtime and the in-play state, and we're properly emitting the game over signal once we reach this state. So now we just need to listen and react to this global signal. And there's basically 2 places we're going to be doing things. First of all, the players will need to celebrate if that country is theirs. Otherwise, they'll need to mourn, and then the UI scene will also need to play the proper animation. So let's start off by looking at the players. So I'm going to go into the player script, and let's go all the way to the top and add another listener. Okay, and I'm going to navigate to on team scored and create another method just below here. All right, and this is going to look pretty similar to this, actually. So let me copy and paste this. So if the country is the winning team, we'll actually celebrate, otherwise we'll mourn. Okay, and this is it for the player. We're just listening to the game over event and then just either celebrating or mourning. That's all we need to do. Let's hop over into the UI script here at the top. And so here we'll also need to listen to these global events. And I'm going to navigate to on-team reset all the way at the bottom, and I'm going to create another callback. Okay, and this takes the name of the country. I don't think we're actually going to need this in this callback. We only needed it for the players. So here what do we want to do? Well, we want to play the proper animation. But if you remember, this animation also uses the score info label, so we probably want to update this with some text in the form of X country wins, and then maybe the score. So maybe we can create a method as part of score helper here, which will help us write this string. Maybe we can call this get final score info. And I'm going to take this signature here. It's actually going to be the same. I'm going to paste it here. All right, so here we just need to check the scores once again. And we'll just write the name of the country, wins, and then maybe the score. All right, so we're expecting 1 string and 2 integers. So the first string we're expecting is the first country because their score is higher. And then we'll display their score versus the opposing team score. Otherwise, I'm going to copy and paste this. And this time it's going to be the away team. Let's set their score first, and then the home team score next. All right, I'm going to copy this line here, and I'm going to go back to the UI, and here I want to make sure I update my score info label.text. Get final score info, and so here I want to pass my game manager.countries and my game manager.score. Okay, I see a couple of things here that may go wrong. So whenever we're scoring a goal and we're in overtime, there is now going to be 2 possible animations that can play. And just to make sure that they don't conflict with each other, I'm going to check here that and only play this goal up here if there's time left. So basically, if they're in overtime and we score a goal, we don't care about who scored it. We don't want to show this animation. We just want to show that the game is over. All right, but we do want to update the score in the UI. We just don't want to show the animation. And the last thing that can go wrong a little bit is here, we're currently using this whenever we start the game initially. And we actually don't want to play this animation when we start the game. So let's maybe create one final method inside our game manager. Has someone scored? Here we just need to check whether any of the score is greater than 0. Okay, and then back into the UI script. So here, I only want to check if, I only want to play this animation if someone has just scored. Right? Otherwise, if we just start the game, this is going to return false. And so when we reset initially, we won't be playing this goal hide animation. All right, perfect. I think we can try this out. So let's hop over into the game manager and I'm going to change the time from 2 minutes to 2 seconds. We're going to try a couple of scenarios. So first scenario is let's go into overtime and see if I can score a goal. All right, well, that was a little bit of a fail. Okay, great. All right, so that worked. I can everything is done, and so the game is over. Perfect. Let's try to keep 2 seconds and set one goal up for the US and see if everything is working properly as well. Okay, 1, 2, and here we go. USA wins 1-0, and the USA team is jumping up and down. Perfect. I just want to make sure now that everything works still properly when there's time left and we score a goal. All right, see how fast I can score a goal here. With Griezmann. All right, and teams are tied, so things look okay. They should reset to their proper positions. And we should now have, looks like there's an error here in terms of setting our control textures. And actually, not just the control textures, but the control overall. I now control multiple players. Okay, the game over seems to be working here, but it looks like there's a little bit of a bug with the control swap. That should happen in the actors container. I think whenever we are kicking things off, this is where we're setting up the control schemes. And I think here the problem is we're only setting the control schemes for players 4 and 5, but we're never resetting the schemes for the other ones. So let's say we're scoring, we have control over player squad 0, or 1 or 2 or 3. We never set that back to CPU. So we should probably have a way to reset all of our control schemes. Let me create another method called reset control schemes. And I'll just create it below here. All right, let's loop over all of our players. So let's start by looping over the away squad and the home squad. Let's loop over all the players and then let's reset their control scheme to CPU. Okay, so we set everybody to CPU and then here we figure out which ones need to be set to player 1 or player 2. All right, let's try this again, and I'm going to see if I can reproduce the bug. So I'm going to pass the ball. I need to change characters. Okay, let me change characters here. There we go. Okay, I have Mbappé. All right, see how fast I can score a goal here. Okay, here we go. Oh my gosh, got tackled. Shoot. All right, perfect. Okay. Let's see if this works out properly. All right, so I'm currently Mbappé, and then when I reset, I should now be, okay. And now I only have control over one player. Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead and commit our changes. All right, and I know we went really fast in this episode, and there's just a ton of things to do. And I'm thinking now that it might have been better to separate this into 2 separate episodes. But anyways, my main objective here is that this series just doesn't lose all of its educational value. And as we are trying to wrap this up, it's a little bit of a trade-off here between going deep and trying to close things off. So the game right now is really starting to look almost complete. One thing I noticed is that the score is currently not reset. Let me just set that to 0-0 again. But yeah, the game is now starting to look pretty much complete. Like, we have a fully working UI with animations that help provide useful information whenever we score a goal, whenever the game is over. And in the next episode, we'll start by adding some music, sound effects, and add some additional polish. It'll really make the game look fantastic. So, at this point, I'm always trying to figure out, is it worth spending more time in this area versus another area? And, rather than spend 30 hours inside this series, I'm thinking it might be better to have just separate series altogether on those topics, which are really interesting and are hard to cover as part of this project here. So anyways, I do think there's a ton of value in having a final product that we can publish on itch.io and that you can see kind of the last steps, like what is needed to actually get a product out the door, and not just have some form of schema or small gameplay. We actually build a full game here. So thank you so much for spending pretty much an hour with me today at the GameDev Tavern. I really hope those last episodes are still useful, nevertheless, and I hope you're excited, just as excited as me, to complete the game in the next few episodes. In the meantime, it's time to take a quick break, and I will see you in the next episode. Cheers.